Hello, my name is John Zanzi. I'm going to be doing my presentation on risks and rules for work and personal communications. So a little introduction. This section is going to cover a few things, including how employers monitor their employees on company computers and cell phones, where employers draw the line with work and personal materials, laws pertaining to employee monitoring, personal employee use of social media, and tracking employees on company-provided devices. So most employers do not allow workers to use work emails and devices for personal matters. This just being due to the best interests of the company. It causes a lot of issues and problems. Two problems with employees using their own personal devices for work are the cost and resources of employers making sure that every device that every employee has is compatible. Just with all these cell phones and computers that are out on the market, it'd just be way too expensive. The second issue with that is the security. Pretty much what it comes down to is that not every smartphone and computer is as safe security-wise as the best smartphone on the market. So it provides extra risk that the company just doesn't need. So this applies to high-ranking government officials because technically they're not supposed to be using their personal emails for government matters. However, there's been many big cases where they have used their personal emails, and it's a potential issue because they're a lot easier to be hacked into, and whoever hacks these accounts can get their hands on important government information that they normally wouldn't be able to. So employers create rules and requirements to mitigate risk. Some of these pretty much policies that they enact are whether they force employees to create passwords on their computers to get into, or they create a policy where if they lose their device, then they're able to remotely wipe everything off that device. So if anybody gets their hands on it, they can't get the information. And the last thing to remember regarding this is that the internet, it wasn't created to give users a safe environment. It was created to share information. So, it's not always the safest place. There are hackers and there are potential leaks that do happen. So moving on to companies monitoring their employee systems, approximately 50% of large companies in the U.S. do monitor their employees' emails and voicemails. Many employees visit non-work related websites on company time and company technology. These websites include sports websites, shopping, investment websites. So pretty much to combat this, large companies use software to track website visitation. They'll block websites that aren't work related, like Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. This creates a lot of controversy because workers believe they should be able to look at what they want, and they should be able to make their own decisions. But the company's best interest is always in mind. So a few reasons for companies to monitor the employee communications. Pretty much the top three reasons are training, productivity, and making sure that workers are compliant with policies. So some benefits of monitoring employee systems. These include preventing leaks of vital company information. They're also able to oversee employee messages for violations that could harm company reputation. In the health industry, it prevents HIPAA violations, preventing patient information being spread out to someone else besides the patient caregiver and the patient. This also allows employers to monitor for sexual assault allegations and cases of sexual assault where maybe an employer sent out an inappropriate email or voicemail to another employee. So some statistics regarding monitoring. A 2011 survey found that a quarter of companies block access to social media websites. Another survey found that emails by employees led to lawsuits against 15% of companies. And that same survey found that 26% of companies had fired an employee for improper use of company email. That's a pretty good chunk of that company right there. One large U.S. company found that on one average day, employees viewed 50,000 YouTube videos and listened to 4,000 hours of music. And that's just on one day. So that's a lot of company time being wasted. So regarding the law to all this, it's pretty much established by the ECPA, which is the Electronic Communications Privacy Act. Pretty much what this says is that people aren't allowed to search or read stored emails without a warrant. But the thing is, this doesn't apply to work and corporations. They kind of get skipped over on this because as long as they're running their own system and own email, they're able to read through that and make sure that everything's running smoothly. So a lot of people object this, and they think that people should have their right to privacy regardless of the company owning the database or server or whatever it is. However, that's not always the case, and employers do have the right to search through that stuff. So there are a few instances, however, where employers don't have the right to look through or surveil on their employees. This includes putting cameras in bathrooms to make sure employees aren't wasting time in the bathrooms. They can't read through emails to investigate union activity, and they also can't do that same thing to find whistleblowers. So some legal cases surrounding monitoring. There's been cases where employees have been fired criticizing their boss. Another case decided that the company could actually surveil on a forum that was talking about the boss. Another case ruled that the company actually did not have the right to read emails sent at work on a personal device between the employee and his lawyer. This just due to the attorney-client privilege and because it was sent on a personal device. However, a very similar case ruled against the employee talking to the lawyer, but this time it was on a company email program. It wasn't on the private. Email. So moving on to personal social media use, a third of companies in a survey admitted to disciplining employees due to improper use of social media. There's a few cases of controversial firings, teachers being fired for photos of her drinking at a bar, a few other controversial things that just kind of bring up a lot of arguments whether employers should be able to fire their employees for that stuff. And a lot of times people question whether these firings violate freedom of speech just because these people aren't at work when these firings have taken place. A lot of people wonder why employees can't criticize their work environment or their bosses when it's not on work property, So this pretty much sets up a problem to define what's a clear boundary of what employees can do and what they can't do. So another important thing is monitoring employee location. Many companies supply employees with phones that update location at any time. There's several jobs throughout the country that do this today. And one example is security fobs that allow nurses to scan into the hospital, the emergency room, or whatever department they're working in. These also have tracking devices in them, so the charge nurse can see where every nurse is in the emergency room. So they can see where they're having their lunch break or whether they're in the bathroom and all that stuff. It's just so they have access to, in case a patient codes or something like that, they know where every nurse is. Some government workers have actually refused these supplied phones that track their location. So this is another controversial topic. One company actually found that their employees were leaving their air conditioner on in vehicles from these tracking devices. And the company actually saved a lot of money by forcing them to turn off their cars. But now the workers had to eat in hot vehicles, which is pretty ridiculous. So tracking and monitoring of truck drivers. Many big rig truck companies have tracking monitoring devices, which are very invasive. They show location, speed, and even whether the headlights are on. They pretty much are to help delivery and reduce expenses and stuff like that. They also allow to recover stolen trucks. And allow to make sure that their employees are following protocol. But it does raise a question of micromanaging and is very Big Brother-esque. So to sum up, the issue is pretty much company use of electronics allows for controversial but beneficial techniques, including tracking of employees, monitoring of employees, and enforcing employee use of social media. It's an issue because there's potential violations of free speech, Big Brother surveillance techniques, unfair working conditions. A potential solution, it's pretty tough to draw a line in the sand because it's really hard to figure out what's fair and what isn't and to actually put that into legal standing. It hasn't been done today, and that's why there's so many different cases that had a lot of outcomes on it. What can be done in the future with this? Kind of a big question is, where will companies stop when it comes to monitoring employees for their own benefit? Because there aren't clear laws in place, they can kind of keep doing whatever they want as far as surveilling on their employees goes. And that's it. Thank you, guys.